And so you get to the beginning part of Genesis 12, and this is like, oh my goodness, we're off on a great adventure with this swashbuckling guy willing to take risk, Abraham. And then it feels like it all comes crashing down by the time we get to the middle of the chapter. Because the guy who is willing to take so much risk then disappoints us in a very profound way. How did this guy, right, who was willing to step out in courage, to leave everything behind, end up acting in such a spineless manner, right? How do we go from this act of boldness to this act of profound disappointment? Well, in thinking about this scene this morning, what I want to do is just ask a couple of questions. And let's see what we can glean from this text, what we can learn from this text. And really the first question, perhaps is the most natural question. It is, why? Why does he do this? Why does he go from courageous to cowardly so quickly? And maybe the simple answer is just pressure, right? And with that pressure came fear, right? Because here's one thing I think we need to acknowledge as we kind of look at Abraham's experience. We need to acknowledge that under pressure, it's natural to seek control and comfort. And I think in Abraham's case, this is how he was trying to take control back of the situation. So that leads me to this question. Just take a moment with me and fill in this blank. When I'm under pressure, I blank. Wrestle with that statement for a moment. When I'm under pressure, I blank. Now, for some of us, maybe even many of us, our responses maybe are pretty healthy. When I'm under pressure, I kind of seek to figure out how I can engage a situation well. I get other people involved. I'm part of a group at church. I get people praying for me. Maybe you would say that's what I do when I'm under pressure. But I think for others of us, if we're honest, our responses may be unhealthy, right? When I'm under pressure, I get angry. When I'm under pressure, I become irritable to everyone around me. When I'm under pressure, I seek to control through my displeasure. When I'm under pressure, I procrastinate just to try to avoid hard things or hard conversations or hard decisions. For some, even when I'm under pressure, I turn to self-harm, cutting. So just wrestle with that statement for a moment. When I'm under pressure, I blank. So that leads just to one more question this morning. And that question is, well, how? How did he get back on track? How do we get back on track when we feel stuck? Maybe furthermore, how do we avoid getting stuck in the first place? How do we avoid getting kind of overwhelmed by that pressure and doing unhealthy things? So, in a word, his life gets back on track through worship. Now, I realize in saying that, this can be hard, right? When you're under pressure, it's hard to see God's goodness and his faithfulness. And some of us are in situations where it's like, I'm not sure how God can be at work in this, and I get that. Furthermore, for some of us, it's like we've blown it. We know we've made mistakes. We know we've gotten off track, and it's kind of like, I'm not sure how God can make anything positive out of the mistakes that I have made. Well, if that's where you're at, there's one more thing I want you to see in this text. And that is this. I think it's important to understand that the foundational point of this narrative is ultimately not about Abraham. The foundational point of this narrative is about God. And the foundational point of the story is the truth that God is faithful to unfaithful people. We get on track through worship. We get back on track through worship.